All right, it's U.S. election day. The U.S. is divided and the stakes are high here in terms of international relations as well. The inauguration of a new U.S. president is planned for the 20th of January next year. But before then, there may be contestation, litigation, possibly going all the way to the Supreme Court, and even post-election violence is feared. To discuss, we're now joined by Professor John Stremlau from the International Relations Department at Wits University. Professor Stremlau, thank you for being with us. Some say this is the most important election in the US in decades, maybe that many of us have seen in our lifetimes. Do you agree?
Well, I agree, and so does Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So everyone agrees this one is a critical one.
Trump has suggested he may not accept the outcome. So there are fears here of what happens beyond polling day, what happens when the numbers start coming in, and it could take a long time to get firm results. Firstly, do you believe he's blustering, or could this mean a possible crisis?
I don't know whether he's blustering or not, but you raise a very important point. Critical to the success and sustainability of any democracy is consent of the loser. If Donald Trump loses according to the results of these voting that's already taken place and will take place today, and he refuses to leave, that is insubordination, and it is unprecedented. And in fact, it's never been any president or presidential candidate seriously questioning the integrity of the U.S. voting system, which is critically important because it is such a complicated system. There's no National Elections Commission like we have here in the United States, 50 separate states, very, very complicated. And yet the public has been voting confidently for 230 years, and Donald Trump is calling all of that into question. It is really outrageous.
So you're saying he's actually undermining democracy in the States. Do you think that has long-term consequences here?
Of course, if he was to get reelected somehow, or to somehow steal the election, because he has incited violence, he has talked about fraudulent mail-in ballots with no evidence at all. He has consistently attacked the electoral system. Indeed, he lost by 3 million votes to Hillary Clinton, who accepted the results because Donald Trump won in the Electoral College, that peculiar U.S. system. And yet he still protests that these were fake votes that gave Clinton the edge. I mean, he is so irresponsible in his relationship to the democracy, but of course has very little understanding of government and has behaved very erratically, as we all know.
Is there a crisis, even if it's not about him trying to sort of not accept the outcomes, but there is a lengthy contestation through the courts? Some speculation that this will end up in the Supreme Court, where the Conservatives have a majority. And I mean, explain that to us in South Africa. Surely judges should be completely impartial. It doesn't matter where they come from. Or could the Conservative judges give an election to Trump that he would otherwise not have had?
Well, they certainly could if it came to that. The chances of it happening are, in my mind, extremely small. It did happen, however, in 2000, Al Gore and George W. Bush, and a 5-4 decision by the Supreme Court along really partisan lines, since the 5 were appointed all by Republicans. They gave the vote to the election outcome to Bush, even though Gore won a few hundred more votes. This was down in Florida, which was the critical electoral college contribution to that win. And Al Gore accepted the results of the court. Now, I want to add, however, that you referred to 100 million voters who have already cast their ballots. This is not only unprecedented, but it's a reminder that the public still wants to have their votes counted and cast and counted. And I think with Twitter and Instagram and Apple and all the high-tech companies, Facebook, offering voter education, voter fact-finding checks, that the tendency for Donald Trump to say, look, if I'm ahead on election night tonight, then I've won. No. It's got to be counted, properly certified, and then we will decide the winner. That's the way the game has always been played, and that's the way it must be played in this very, very contentious election. But at the same time, I want to add that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have a lead in the, at least in the composite polling, that is very high. It hasn't been.
All right, sorry, Professor, I think you're getting some interference there. We'll stop that immediately. Let me ask you, you were once attached to a U.S. administration. Are you sad watching what's happening in America? Going into these polls, it seems like the U.S. is so divided. Some see U.S. President Donald Trump as the savior to fix that. Some blame him for exactly what is happening. Possibly also foreign interference, wanting America to sort of eat itself from the inside. Is it a very sad situation for you?
It is extremely sad, and there's an irony here because I did serve in George H.W. administration, and then stayed on into the Clinton administration. And so I've seen it from both sides, bipartisan way. I was a presidential appointment of George H.W. Bush. And I'm very, very troubled. I never thought I'd live this long to see this democracy of the U.S. in such perilous state. But there are deep flaws, and the democracy needs to be reformed. And if Joe Biden gets a sufficient mandate in the Senate, maybe we can start getting some reforms in place to make the democracy more modern, more like South Africa's democracy, a human rights democracy that gives equal voting rights to all citizens.
All right, thank you for your time tonight, International Relations Professor John Stremlau.